Hello and welcome back to Agile Coaching Foundations by Digital Agility Institute. We are happy to have you start your Agile coaching journey with us here. In this video, we will be talking about the ICF core competencies for one-on-one coaching as part of the professional coaching that they conduct. Right. So the last video we talked about what professional coaching is and what ICF means as well. ICF is one of the coaching bodies that is very well known across the globe. It stands for International Coaching Federation. So let's get straight into the core competencies that ICF advocates. Now, this particular picture represents all the core competencies that ICF talks about, correct? So, when you talk about ICF, there are essentially 10 core competencies that ICF refers to. What I have tried to depict them as here is more about trying to represent the core and what is that at the center of the core competencies as a coach, that those are the competencies that we need to build, and they are the central to the coaching conversation and us being a coach. And then in what context you would do them, right? What all you need and how you represent or present them, exhibit them, and then what it would help the coachee accomplish, right? So that's the way I try to represent this. There could be many different representations of the core competencies, but this is something I thought could be useful. So at the core of the competencies, what we need to build basically within us is first is the coaching presence. Now, what is coaching presence? The ability for you to be in the moment when you are having that conversation with your client, to be 100% present to your client, listening to them, understanding them, empathizing with them, and also being present to yourself. What does that mean? Present to yourself is when we are having coaching conversations with the client, and sometimes those may be very sensitive conversations or difficult conversations about the situations that they are going through. What can happen and what will happen is that the emotions, the energy, that the coachee is exhibiting will get transferred to us as coaches when you are empathizing with them as well, right? So you start feeling those emotions within yourself. Coaching presence is also about acknowledging that emotion getting transferred to you, understanding how you are being influenced or impacted by that presence, and then being able to manage yourself, right? So it's not just about being present to the client, it's also about being present to yourself as a coach. That is about coaching presence, not having any other thoughts running in mind at that point of time, not trying to really have any prejudice about the client, not carrying the past conversations into the current context that the client is bringing, right? So all that means when you are getting into any conversation with the client, you should go into that conversation as if it is your first conversation with the client. That means there is absolutely no influence of the past conversations. You are not trying to create an image of, okay, this is the kind of person I'm going to coach today. That means you are already going with a judgment, you are already going with a preconceived notion, and that can influence the way you coach, the way the coaching conversation happens. the kind of questions you ask. So you are more engrossed or influenced by the earlier conversation. So that should not happen. When you are present, completely be there without being influenced by the environment, by the by what the client is stating. You should be fully present to the client always in that conversation. Okay, that is about coaching presence. That is the first of the all competencies. With presence comes everything, right? That is why presence is so important in a coach. Next comes your active listening. If you are present, when we talk about listening, we talk about different states of listening. You can always refer to my book, Unlearning, where I talk about the 5 states of listening. Now, what is active listening, right? Listening to what is being said by the client and what is not being said by the client. Now, when we say what is not being said, it's more the what they exhibit, what energy they are generating when they are saying certain things to you, what probably is going on in their mind when they are actually saying. You can make it out from their body language, you can make it out from their eyes, the energy they show, their facial expressions that come through, right? All those elements. So active listening is about not just listening to what is being spoken, listening to the intent behind what is being spoken, listening to the feelings behind what is being spoken, listening to the emotions behind what is being spoken, listening to the energy that currently is being exhibited by the client while they are speaking those things. All those elements contribute to active listening. Correct? So the better you are as a listener, the more you understand, the more you would be able to really, be fully and conversing in a more positive way. Means you are able to more ask the right questions to create that awareness that the client needs. Correct? At that point of time. So powerful questioning is the next competency. Once you are present completely, and only when you are present completely is when you will notice what is not being said. And when you are able to listen to that what is not being said, then you will be able to really ask those powerful questions. So when you talk about questions, we refer to them that there are 2 types of questions. One is a close-ended question, the second one is a open-ended questions. When we talk about close-ended questions, what are those? Where you get an answer as an yes or a no. Do you like this particular dish that you are talking about? I would probably say yes or a no, correct? Is this how you do things? Yes or no. That means there is a definitive answer to that. The close-ended questions, when asked, do not give an opportunity for the client to evolve their thinking, evolve the way they are looking at the situation. And in the contrast is your open-ended questions. If you want to ask the same question, right? Do you like eating this dish? Now, if you want to make it a open-ended questions, how would you ask that question? What do you like about this dish? Then suddenly there are n number of possibilities, correct? What they like about that dish. Instead of do you like eating this dish, right? So you are, by asking open-ended questions, you are giving an opportunity for them to evolve their thought process, grow that boundary they would have kept in looking at a situation, change their perspective, change the way they are looking at the situation. That is the power of powerful questioning. Correct? What we also say when we talk about powerful questioning is try to avoid asking a why question. Now, why do we say that? Whenever you ask someone why are you not doing this, it more sounds like an interrogation rather than a questioning, right? That means trying to clarify, trying to validate, trying to help them reflect. Open-ended questions are meant for that. We do use why questions. That is when you are likely to challenge certain convictions of the client, challenge certain belief of the client, or certain behavior of the client. Why do you think this is happening this way? That means that at that point you are trying to challenge their conviction, their belief, their value, the way they are, feeling or thinking, or they made certain decisions which they want to reflect upon. Otherwise, as far as possible, we try asking questions that are what, which, where, how, but why is mostly, as far as possible, avoided. Okay, so that is about powerful questioning. Now next comes the direct communication. This is another major competency, right? Many times as coaches we might feel, I don't know whether I should ask this question or not. How will the client react if I ask this question, right? How will the client feel if I make this observation? No, you are there for that. You are there to show the mirror image of the client. And that's why we say the coaching is all about mirroring the client. That means you are there to in front of the client as a mirror to just show them that image which most people would not like to see, right? Even as coaches, when we go to our own coach for a conversation, we try avoiding seeing that side of us. We all have certain side which we try to not look at. We know it is there. It's not that we are oblivious to that fact. We know that particular side of us is there, but we try to avoid getting to see that because we kind of are not comfortable in that. But that is what the coach is there for. So if you have an observation, make that observation by all means. You can ask, can I make an observation here? This is what I am sensing. And that's not your judgment. And you should not get confused between making an observation or providing a feedback to judging people. No, you are only sharing what you feel is what you are noticing or what you are understanding, and then trying to then put it back on the client to say, this is what I am noticing. Do you think it is right? Or what are you noticing? Or what are you sensing? Right? That way, it kind of puts the ball back in their court. So when we say coaching, right, we always, I refer to that like, playing tennis. You don't win as a player if the ball is in your court. You always win when the ball is in your opponent's court. In the same way, you are expected to always put the ball in the client's court. You should never have the ball in your court. That means you don't take ownership for anything for the client. Everything that the client needs to do is with them. So in a coaching conversation, most of the work is done by the client. And for that to happen, for the client to get into areas that they try to avoid, they try to dodge, direct communication is needed. Sharing your observation, sharing your reflection, sharing what you sense, what you are hearing. You need to have direct communication with your client or the coachee. And how coaching conversation happens. For a coaching conversation to really happen in a right way, in a right uh, framework, one, you need to follow the ethical guidelines. That means whatever is discussed within a coaching conversation between you and the client always stays there. It is like that famous quote, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? So that means whatever is discussed within a coaching conversation stays between you two. There should be absolute confidentiality ensured always between the coach and the client. That is the foundation for a coaching relationship. Okay. Then coaching is all about establishing trust and intimacy, right? So when you talk about trust, again, you can look at one of my videos on YouTube where I talk about how to develop trust. There is a one good equation when you talk about trust. How do you develop trust? Trust equation talks about credibility, reliability, and intimacy being the positive contributors to trust, and self orientation is always the negative contributor. So do look at that video on YouTube channel. You will find it's a probably half 1 hour video talking about establishing trust, right? So establishing trust and intimacy is again foundational for a coaching conversation or coaching relationship to exist, correct? And only when you have these two you can actually have a meaningful coaching conversation. If your client doesn't trust you, if you are not able to maintain the confidentiality, absolutely there would be no relationship established, no rapport established between you and your client. If that doesn't happen, the client is not going to open up about their situations. So coaching is also about creating that safe environment for the client to be themselves, to be their authentic self without fearing being judged, right? So that we talked about in the earlier video. So that is very important. Now what else is important? Establishing a coaching agreement, and this is something most people miss out on. Any coaching conversation, whether it is a 10-minute conversation or a 20-minute or a 1 hour, you should have a coaching agreement. What does a coaching agreement contain? We will talk about that in the next videos that we are coming up with. But in a nutshell, coaching agreement is all about identifying what is the outcome the client is expecting from that particular conversation, right? Whether it is a 10-minute conversation or a 1 hour conversation, it doesn't matter. Whatever the duration, within this 10 minutes, what is that you want to get? So establish coaching agreement, right? Always begin with contracting. So we will look at the coaching process and how the whole coaching process functions in the further videos. But for now, remember that it is one of the important competencies for a coach to have, to establish a coaching agreement for every session that we are having with the client. Correct? Then what else does a coach need to develop, right? Coach needs to develop that ability to help the client in planning and setting their goals and objectives. Ultimately somebody comes to you or anybody comes to you, they come to you with certain aspirations to be fulfilled or certain problems to be solved or certain limitations to be overcome. Everybody has a certain objective and that is why they come to us as coaches. So it's important for a coach to be able to help the client in developing that objective that they are looking for, validating that objective if they already have it, right? And then how do how do they strategize? What are the strategies that they are thinking about to accomplish those? And then the next step is helping the clients to design their actions, right? And also help them manage, visualize their progress, how, what actions you will take, what could be the support you need, how do you know you have achieved or made this progress, correct? So those are the things which we kind of as coaches help the client think about. How can you hold yourself accountable to take these actions, correct? Then major part at the end, coaching is also about helping the client to develop that sustenance within themselves. It's not about kind of having a conversation with the client and you make them come to you every time. That's not how coaching is supposed to be working. So one of the things is also about having a conversation at the end of a session with the client about what is the awareness you got about yourself in this conversation. So every conversation you are trying to create that new awareness to help them reflect and say, okay, this I didn't know about myself and this is what I realize now, right? So that awareness creation is and reflection about that awareness is also an important element. So that competency of helping the client generate that awareness is also one of the core competencies that a coach would need, right? And that is why I said coaching is the foundation for being an agile coach. And it's very encouraging to see now so many agile coaches actually are stepping into the professional coaching world. They are looking to understand what coaching is all about, right? And I'm pretty sure if you are listening to this video, you are also in that journey, correct? So welcome to the club. And that is about the core competencies of a professional coach when you are likely to have a one-on-one conversation, when you are likely to have a one-to-one conversation with your client. It could be remote, it could be face-to-face. That these competencies should be developed, and this is a journey, right? So you can never say that, okay, I now have achieved the 100% coaching presence. I would love to hear someone who can really say that, right? So that is all about core competencies of a professional coach from an ICF perspective. Now, as usual, coming to the activity part. So, activity number 6. Now you understood what are all the core competencies that we talked about, right? So now looking at these core competencies, reflect on these core competencies, right? And then think about where you stand. Take a scale, whether it is on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 to 10, however you want to measure yourself. Where do you stand in each of those competencies? What is the level of presence you have at this time? What is the state of listening you have at this time? What is your ability to ask powerful questions? What is your ability to communicate directly or use direct communication in your conversations? All those elements, right? So try to rate yourself. And as I always say, any rating is incomplete if you don't have the right evidence that can help you validate why you are rating yourself at that level. So if you are saying, okay, I'm at level 9 in coaching presence, what tells you that you are at level 9? That is very important. Okay, I hope you understand and you are loving these conversations. As usual, once you complete the activity, please upload your response in on the portal, learning portal, for this particular chapter. And we would love to see you again back in the next video. And the next video will be about team coaching, because so far whatever we talked about the competencies and what coaching is all about one-on-one, coaching people one-to-one. So we will next move into team coaching. Team coaching is just as a a filler, is that it's something which has come up as a new phenomenon in the last 1.5 2 years, and that was something, I don't say it was non-existent, but it was. Now it has been formally brought out as a domain, and that credit goes to Professor Peter Hawkins and David Clutterbuck. And we'll talk about all that in the next video. Thanks for joining us today, and we would love to see you back in the next session. Happy learnings.